A god is hanging from a tree. He is pierced through with a spear, his own spear. He has been hanging there for 9 days and 9 nights, with no food and no water, in agony, staring down into the dark. And here is the disturbing part. No enemy did this to him. No one is torturing him. He climbed up there himself. He drove the spear into his own body. He is sacrificing himself to himself. Why would the king of the gods do something so terrible to his own body? For one reason, knowledge. He is hunting for wisdom, for secret cosmic knowledge, and he has already learned that wisdom in this universe is never free. He once tore out one of his own eyes and dropped it into a well just for a single drink of understanding. Now he is giving his very life, hanging on this tree, to seize the deepest secrets of all. His name is Odin, the All-Father, and he is so desperate for wisdom because he knows something the rest of us would give anything not to know. He knows exactly how and when he is going to die. He has seen the end of the world, the death of the gods, and it is coming. So Odin is doing the only thing he can. He is gathering every scrap of knowledge and power in existence, paying any price in a desperate bid to be ready for a doom he already knows he cannot stop. This is the age of the Norse gods, at their height of power and glory. And it is also the age when the seeds of their destruction quietly take root. This is Norse Mythology, Part 2. Welcome back to History Geek. Quick recap from Part 1. And if you missed it, go back and watch, because it sets all of this up. Last time, the universe was born from fire and ice. The gods killed the first giant Ymir and built the entire world from his corpse. They raised the great world tree, Yggdrasil, at the center of everything. And then came the secret that defines all of Norse myth. The gods learned through prophecy that they are doomed, that a final battle, Ragnarok, will one day destroy them and the world. Today, we meet those doomed gods up close, Odin, Thor, and the trickster Loki, and we watch, step by step, as the end they fear begins to assemble itself right under their noses. This is part 2 of 3, so if you want the grand finale, Ragnarok itself, the death of the gods, hit subscribe and ring the bell right now so you don't miss it. One tap genuinely keeps this channel alive, and then we keep going. Thank you. Now, to the Hall of the Gods, and stay to the end, because the gods are about to try everything in their power to prevent their doom, and every single thing they do to stop it will only bring it closer. Let's begin with the All-Father. Let's start with the king of them all. Odin is not the kind of head god you might expect. He's not a simple ruler of thunder and sky. He is the god of wisdom, of war, of poetry, of magic, and of death. He is brooding, restless, endlessly cunning, and willing to do absolutely anything for knowledge and power. And everything about him is shaped by that one terrible fact. He knows the end is coming. We saw the lengths he'll go to in the opening. Consider the eye. The Norse said that beneath one of the roots of the great tree lay a well of pure wisdom, guarded by an ancient being. Odin came to that well and asked to drink, to gain its deep understanding. And the price was steep, one of his own eyes. Odin didn't hesitate. He tore out his eye, dropped it into the well, and drank. From that day, the All-Father saw the world with one eye, having traded the other for wisdom. That is who Odin is, a god who would maim himself for a single drink of insight. And the tree? from our cold open. Odin hung himself upon the world tree, wounded by his own spear for 9 nights, a sacrifice of himself to himself, until, at the very edge of death, he perceived what he was after: the runes. To the Norse, the runes weren't just an alphabet. They were sacred symbols of cosmic power, the hidden secrets woven into reality itself, magic, fate, the deep code of the universe. And Odin seized them screaming and fell back from the tree, alive, carrying knowledge no one had ever held before. And Odin had one more great project, the strangest of all. He built a magnificent hall, and he began to fill it with an army, but not an army of the living, an army of the dead. The Norse believed that when warriors died bravely in battle, the most worthy were chosen by Odin's battle maidens and carried up to his hall, where they would feast and fight and prepare. Odin was deliberately collecting the souls of dead heroes. Why? For one purpose only, so that when Ragnarok came, when the final battle arrived, he would have the greatest army ever assembled to fight at his side. Every fallen hero gathered against the end of the world. Even Odin's paradise was really a war camp for a battle he already knew he would lose. That is the shadow over everything the Norse gods do. But Odin was not alone. He had sons and allies, and one in particular who was the muscle of the gods, the shield of both Asgard and humankind, the one the common people loved most of all, the Thunderer, Thor, the god of thunder. If Odin was the mind of the gods, Thor was their right arm, enormously strong, fierce, straightforward, quick to anger and quick to laugh, and armed with the single most famous weapon in all of mythology, his hammer. The Norse said the hammer was forged by dwarves, those master craftsmen deep beneath the earth, and that it came out slightly flawed, with a handle a little too short, because the mischievous Loki, in the form of a biting fly, had interfered with the making of it. But flawed or not, that hammer was a force of nature. It never missed. It always returned to Thor's hand when thrown. And with it, Thor could level mountains and shatter the skulls of giants. And that was Thor's whole purpose, to be the wall between order and chaos. Remember, the giants never forgave the gods for the murder of their ancestor. They were the constant threat at the borders of the ordered world, always seeking to tear it down. And again, it was Thor who stood in their way, crossing into the land of the giants, smashing their champions, defending both the gods above and the fragile humans in the middle world below. To ordinary Norse people living in a hard and dangerous land, Thor was the protector, the one who kept the monsters out. He was, by far, the most beloved god of all. But there's one story about Thor that you need to remember, because it plants a seed for the end of everything. The Norse told of a day Thor went fishing, far out into the deep ocean, hunting the biggest catch imaginable, because coiled at the bottom of the sea, encircling the entire world, lay a monstrous serpent so vast it could wrap around the whole earth and bite its own tail. And Thor, being Thor, decided to fish for it. He hooked it. The titanic serpent rose, thrashing from the deep, and Thor and the monster came face to face, the thunder god and the world serpent, locked in a struggle that churned the seas. The Norse said Thor very nearly killed it then and there, raising his hammer for the death blow. But at the last second, his terrified companion cut the fishing line, and the serpent sank back into the depths and escaped. And here is why that moment matters. Because the gods had a prophecy about that serpent and the thunder god, they were destined to meet again one final time at Ragnarok. And in that final meeting, they were fated to kill each other. Thor would slay the great serpent at last, and then, After taking just 9 steps, he would fall dead from its venom. The mightiest defender of the gods, doomed to die alongside the monster he could never quite kill. Now, where did a world-encircling monster like that even come from? For that answer, we have to talk about the most dangerous figure in all of Norse mythology. Not a giant, not a monster. One of the gods' own, Loki. He is one of the most fascinating characters ever imagined because he doesn't fit any box. He lives among the gods. He's even sworn as a blood brother to Odin himself, but he isn't truly one of them. He has the blood of giants in him. He's a shapeshifter who can become a fish, a bird, a horse, an old woman, anything he likes, and he is the trickster, brilliant, charming, mischievous, and completely unpredictable. And in these early days, Loki is genuinely useful. Time and again, his cleverness gets the gods out of trouble, often trouble that Loki himself caused. But still, he talks dwarves into forging the gods' greatest treasures, including Thor's hammer. He thinks his way out of impossible situations. For a long time, Loki is the gods' problem solver, their clever friend, the spark of chaos that somehow keeps working in their favor. The gods tolerate him, laugh with him, rely on him. But there was a darkness growing in Loki, and nowhere is it clearer than in his children. Because Loki fathered 3 children with a giantess, and these were no ordinary offspring. They were monsters. The first was an enormous wolf. The second was that very serpent Thor went fishing for, the beast destined to encircle the world and one day to kill the thunder god. And the third was a strange and terrible daughter, half living and half corpse, who would become the ruler of the dead. Now, the gods learned through prophecy that these 3 children of Loki would play terrible roles in their destruction. The wolf, especially. They were warned that this wolf was destined to grow into a beast so powerful that one day it would kill Odin himself, swallowing the All-Father whole at the end of the world. So the gods decided to deal with the wolf before it could grow too strong. And this is where the great Norse tragedy really begins. Because watch what their attempt to prevent their doom actually does. The wolf was growing huge and dangerous, so the gods resolved to bind it. They had a magical, unbreakable cord made, thin as a ribbon, but stronger than any chain. But the wolf was clever and suspicious. It would only allow itself to be bound if one of the gods placed a hand in its mouth as a pledge of good faith, a guarantee that this was only a game, and they'd set it free. Only one god was brave enough to do it, the god of war and justice, who placed his hand between the wolf's jaws. The gods bound the beast with the magical cord, and it held. The wolf thrashed and strained and could not break free. It had been tricked. And in its fury, it bit down and tore off the hand of the god who had pledged it. The wolf was bound, yes, but now it was bound and full of hatred, waiting for the day it would break loose at Ragnarok and take its revenge. The gods had a brave god short one hand and an enemy that would never forgive them. Their solution had only sharpened the blade aimed at their own throats, and that was just the beginning. Among all the gods, there was one who was loved by everyone. His name was Balder. He was a son of Odin, and he was beautiful, kind, gentle, and radiant, so bright and good that he seemed to give off light. He was the most beloved being in all the worlds, the joy of the gods. And that is exactly why his story is the most heartbreaking in all of Norse myth. It began with dreams. Balder started having terrible dreams, dark, ominous dreams that foretold his own death. He told the other gods, and they were gripped with fear. The thought of losing Balder was unbearable, so his mother, the queen of the gods, set out to make her beloved son completely invulnerable. She traveled throughout the entire world, and she extracted a solemn promise from every single thing in existence, every plant, every animal, every stone, every metal, every weapon, every sickness, that none of them would ever harm Balder. And it worked. Now, nothing in all creation could hurt him. So the gods invented a joyful new game. They would gather around Balder and throw things at him, rocks, spears, axes, arrows, and laugh with delight as every weapon simply bounced off, refusing to touch him. It became a celebration. Their beloved Balder, gloriously unkillable, standing there smiling as the gods hurled everything they had, and nothing could do him the slightest harm. But Loki, and by now the darkness in Loki had grown and curdled, could not stand it. He went in disguise and cunningly discovered a secret. When Balder's mother had gone around the world gathering those promises, she had skipped one small, young, harmless-looking plant, thinking it far too insignificant to bother with: the mistletoe. One single thing in all creation had never sworn the oath. And so Loki took that overlooked little plant and he fashioned it into a dart, a sharp, deadly point of mistletoe. Then he looked around the joyful gathering and found his instrument, Balder's own brother, a god who was blind. The blind brother stood at the edge of the game, unable to join in, unable to see to throw. Loki approached him kindly and offered to help. He placed the mistletoe dart in the blind god's hand, pointed him toward Balder, and guided his aim. The dart flew true. The one thing in all the world that could harm Balder struck him, and the most beloved god, the bright and gentle one, fell down dead. And in an instant, the laughter died with him. The Norse said it was the worst moment the gods had ever known. They stood frozen in horror and grief, unable even to speak, staring at the body of the best among them, killed through Loki's malice by the innocent hand of his own blind brother. They were too stunned, at first, even for vengeance. Instead, desperate, they sent a messenger riding down the long, dark road to the land of the dead, to beg the ruler of that realm, Loki's own daughter, to release Balder and let him return. And she gave them one condition. She would let Balder come back to life, she said, only if every single thing in all the worlds would weep for him. If all of creation would mourn, surely, the gods thought, everything loved Balder. So they sent word across all the worlds, weep for Balder and bring him home, and everything wept. Every god, every human, every animal, every tree, every stone, even the metals. All of creation cried for the beloved god so that he could return. Everything wept, except one. In a dark cave sat a bitter old giantess who coldly refused to shed a single tear and said Balder could stay dead for all she cared. And that one refusal was enough. Balder was lost. He had to remain among the dead. And the gods soon realized the bitter truth. That cold, old giantess had been Loki, in disguise. He had murdered the best of them, and then made sure they could never get him back. With that, something broke between Loki and the gods, forever. After Balder, Loki didn't even pretend anymore. The Norse tell of a great feast of the gods that Loki crashed uninvited, and instead of his old charm, he stood before them all and hurled vicious insults at every god in the hall, dragging out their secrets and shaming them one by one, daring them to stop him. The friendship was over. The trickster had become the enemy, and the gods had finally had enough. Loki fled. He turned himself into a salmon and hid in a river, darting through the water to escape. But the gods hunted him down, and with a net they caught the slippery fish and dragged Loki back to face their justice. And the punishment they devised for him was as terrible as anything in these stories. They took Loki deep into a cave and bound him to 3 great slabs of rock with bonds that hardened into iron and could not be broken. And then, above his face, they fastened a venomous serpent so that its burning poison would drip down, drop by drop, onto him forever. It was an agony designed to last until the end of the world. There was only one mercy. Loki's faithful wife refused to leave his side. She stood over him, holding a bowl, catching the serpent's venom before it could fall on his face, but the bowl would fill, and each time she had to turn away to empty it, the poison would drip down and burn him, and Loki would writhe and convulse in such pain that the whole earth shook. And the Norse said that is why, to this day, the ground trembles and quakes. It is Loki, far below, thrashing against his bonds. But here is the thing the gods could not change. For all their chains and all their justice, Loki was bound but not destroyed, and the prophecy was clear about what came next. One day, the bonds would break. One day, Loki would tear himself free, full of a hatred sharpened by centuries of agony, and on that day he would not come alone. He would lead the giants and his monstrous children, the freed wolf, the world serpent, against the gods in the final battle. The trickster the gods had once laughed with would become the general of their destruction. Everything was now in place. The wolf bound and waiting, the serpent coiled in the deep, Loki chained and seething, the dead gathering in Odin's hall, all the pieces of the end of the world, set and waiting for the signal to fall. So step back and look at what we just watched, because there's a profound and almost unbearable truth running through all of it. The gods knew their doom was coming, and so they tried to prevent it. They tried to be wise. Odin gave his eye and hung on the tree for knowledge. They tried to be strong. Thor stood guard against the giants. They tried to be careful. They bound the dangerous wolf. They made Balder invulnerable. They chained Loki away. Every single thing they did was an attempt to escape, or delay, or survive the fate they'd been shown. And every single thing they did brought the end closer. Binding the wolf created an enemy who now lives only for revenge. The death of Balder robbed them of their brightest light right when they'd need it most. Chaining Loki gave the trickster centuries of agony to nurse his hatred into something monstrous. The harder the gods fought against their fate, the more surely they sealed it. That is the deep, dark genius of Norse mythology. The terrible idea that fate cannot be cheated, and that sometimes our very efforts to escape our doom are the things that deliver us to it. And yet, remember the lesson from part 1. The gods know all of this. They know how it ends, and they keep going anyway. They keep gathering wisdom, keep guarding the walls, keep living and ruling and loving in the face of a doom they cannot outrun. Not because they think they'll win, but because to the Norse, the measure of a soul was never whether you defeat your fate. It was how you carry yourself while you march toward it. And the gods are about to march toward the greatest, most hopeless, most magnificent last stand ever imagined. Everything is in place now. The seeds are sown. The monsters are waiting. And the long winter that signals the end is about to fall across the world. Next time, the chains break. The horn sounds, and the gods of the north ride out, knowing they will die, to meet the end of all things. That finale Ragnarok, the death of the gods and the end of the world, is part 3, and it is going to be epic. So do this now. Subscribe and ring the bell so it reaches you the moment it drops. We've come this far together. Let's witness the end together. Subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you at the end of the world. In the finale, the great winter that never ends, the breaking of every chain, the last march of the gods, and the death and strange rebirth of the world itself. Tell me in the comments, was Loki always destined to betray the gods, or did they create their own enemy? I read every single one. I'm History Geek. Thanks for journeying through the corridors of time with me. I'll see you in part 3.